This is a response video to a channel on YouTube called Litteral Truth, who on October 11, 2020, did a video called 9/11 Pentagon, in which is a 19-minute video, which I'm going to link um, below the screen here. And I'm going to talk about the points he raised in the video that he claims did or didn't happen at the Pentagon on September 11th, 2001. A lot of these are conspiracy-based points that have long ago been debunked. He claims to have started researching 9/11 in the year 2016. I don't know who he's been looking up, but unfortunately, we have a lot of people within this spectrum of history that are quite erroneous. A lot of these people are also basing their points on speculation and even at times these wild imaginative scenarios that never even happened, and outright lies to boot as well. So one of the first points that he raised in the video is the lack of video evidence showing a plane hitting the Pentagon, which is true as compared to New York, where we have 3 videos showing the North Tower being attacked and dozens of videos showing Flight 175 crashing into the South Tower. There are only 2 videos which don't show a whole plane, which is, by the way, going over 500 miles an hour in a setting shot. And that's because it was a CCTV camera, which didn't catch the plane going straight in, but it catched part of it, and you could see the resulting explosion. Now, if that's all you are researching, a lack of video evidence, well, then you're not a proper investigator. I think, John, that's this person's name. John, I want to tell you that you made a classic mistake of just believing what these certain people in the truth movement have said about the Pentagon, which, I'm not going to blame you here because there's a lot of people who are no-planers. What I mean by no-planers, they don't believe any planes crashed anywhere. Or I call them half-planers, people who believe planes crashed in the World Trade Center, but not at the Shanksville site or at the Pentagon site. Now, regarding the mistake you made, there are videos of people. In fact, I have 50 videos on my channel playlist of eyewitnesses who saw the plane. In fact, there is documented testimonies of over 100 people who were in the vicinity of the Pentagon who saw the plane crash into the building. Now, of course, the default position of some people is to literally dismiss these eyewitness testimonies as false, claiming that they're lying, claiming that they were forced to say this by nefarious agents of the government or whoever, or that they were part of the cover-up themselves. This made the conspiracy much bigger than what you already should have planned it for. And you didn't have to involve anybody. All you had to do was just let the plane crash into the building. So we have a lot of people who actually saw a commercial airliner crash into the building. And I'll link that to below in the description box so you can see for yourself. I've done a couple of videos last year, even the year prior, showing you the erroneous points made by some people in the truth movement who claim no plane crashed into the Pentagon. And so that's one point I just want to point out. That doesn't mean that a plane didn't crash there because there's only 2 security gate videos, one from a booth and one from the camera, of the impact of the building. Second point you raised, which is a common misconception, which is the missing $2.13 trillion from the Pentagon budget. This is this is an erroneous point because Rumsfeld didn't announce that the money was missing. What he did say was it wasn't allocated properly. He's referring to the audits that were performed at the Department of Defense, which show the funds Congress allocates are being utilized. But it's the Pentagon budget system and its financial offices are such a huge labyrinth of avenues and valleys, which move through many different departments within that entity. Computer systems that are used for years that were introduced throughout the Pentagon over the years, which hasn't allocated the money properly. It's not that the money is missing. It's that the audits are incomplete about where that money went to. Did it go to corporations like Boeing or LG3 Technologies or Raytheon? Did it go to the U.S. annual fiscal year about that's where the Pentagon gets its budget from, the fiscal budget priority system, which is through the Senate Select Committee. And so this over the years, and this is not just in 1 year, this 2.3 trillion. That's, first of all, we don't even have that in our GDP. Second of all, this is 2 years, and it's going back to 96. By the way, this story broke through the Associated Press in 1999, and it was repeated by such publications like the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and I'm going to link that below in the description box so you can read it yourself. By the way, Rumsfeld said he would like an overhaul of the Pentagon allocation system and bring it up to date because it's so outdated. He mentioned this during a banquet. And by the way, if it was such a conspiracy regarding missing money, why would he announce it the day before the Pentagon financial officers were going to get hit anyway? Wouldn't make any sense, would it? Right. So we'll leave that for now. Another point you raised was that nobody could envision a plane hitting the Pentagon itself. And you brought up the testimony of Norman Mineta, who is the head of the transportation division, in which he tells the 9/11 Commission that a young naval officer who's an aide would come into the underground bunker and tell Dick Cheney about an incoming plane into the airspace. That the plane was 50 miles out, that the plane was 40 miles out, 30 miles out, right? Well, the naval aide actually is John Cochran, and he's retired now. But that was the naval aide that came in and was telling Dick Cheney about this plane that was in the airspace. And if you're claiming that no plane actually hit the Pentagon, why would you bring this up? Because this is actually Cochran suggesting that a plane is actually coming into the airspace. So if you're claiming that maybe, or as you say, you don't know what hit the Pentagon, but you do know that there's a lack of evidence to suggest it, well, why would you bring this story up? And if it was a stand-down order, there wasn't planes in the airspace anyway. So what are they going to shoot it down with? There was no planes in Washington, D.C. They were in New York. And they were also in upstate New York, over the Atlantic. And by the time that the NORAD got hot guns on the plane, which is weapons on the plane, and they had to mount them on the plane, it was far too late. All the planes had crashed by then. And there wasn't a shoot down order till about 10:03 a.m. according to Cheney. And that's whether you want to believe the story from Cheney and Bush, take it with a grain of salt. But because NORAD lied at both congressional inquiries, we don't have a real good time frame about how they reacted. Um, there was a program called Pentagon MASCAL, which is Pentagon Mass Casualty Project, which is a contingency exercise held in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, which ran a project on October 24th to 26th. And the exercise required emergency response teams, members of the Defense Protective Services, for a possible plane crash into the Pentagon. And that's because the Pentagon has always been a target for terrorists regarding use of planes as weapons. Now, I'm going to go back in time all the way to 1995, 96, was when we got a first instance of terrorists wanting to use planes as weapons through a program or an operation called the Bajinka plot. That was a plot where they were going to bomb 12 planes using timing mechanisms and have one plane hijacked, and that hijacker was going to be Abdul Hakim Murad, who's a co-conspirator along with Ramzi Yousef regarding Operation Bajinka, in which he was going to hijack the plane because he was a licensed pilot, and he was going to crash into CIA Langley headquarters. And he told Philippine investigators all about the operation and about subjects here inside the United States learning to fly at flight training schools throughout the Southwest. So the federal government, especially the FBI, which was handed the file by Rodolfo Mendoza, who was in charge of the Operation Pachinko plot, he gave the file to the FBI. So at least the FBI knew about it back in 1996. At least. That's 5 years prior. So being that there are certain targets inside the United States that were high priority for terrorism targets, one of them being the Pentagon, the other one being the World Trade Center. And do I need to mention the obvious, that the World Trade Center was a target of terrorists in 1993? I don't think I do. Also, another point you raised, Hani Hanjour being a terrible pilot. This is not entirely the case. He's been inside the United States as early as 1992. Went to the University of Arizona to study engineering. And he is also the most experienced pilot of them all, even though I don't believe that he may have crashed the plane into the Pentagon. There is evidence that there is some evidence that suggests there is a sixth hijacker on that plane. And he could have flown the plane into the Pentagon. And to start suggesting that there are pilots who can't retrace or practice on simulators crashing into the Pentagon, well, there's videos on YouTube showing amateur pilots on sim programs crashing the plane into the Pentagon, and these aren't even pilots. These are amateurs doing it. It doesn't take a professional to crash a plane. There are no impossible maneuvers. If you're going to say that there was a large loop around Virginia, that is hard. No, that's Hani Hanjour missed the target. He had to go back and retrace into the Pentagon. And actually, most of the plane was on autopilot. It wasn't until he started descending into lower Virginia that he turned off autopilot and crashed into the Pentagon. This was actually witnessed by not just the eyewitnesses I said before, but also from another plane. It was a C-130 military plane operated by Colonel Stephen O'Brien, who was asked by the FAA to try and locate AA-77 outside his window because he was nearby, and he actually did see the plane crash into the Pentagon. Hani Hanjour actually applied to Civil Aviation School in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, after returning home, but he was rejected because he barely spoke any English. And that was the problem, really. Not that he was a terrible pilot. He actually obtained his pilot's license, even though it wasn't for commercial plane. Don't need to be. These people weren't trained to be professional pilots. They just had to learn how to take off. That's it. Like I said, most of the planes were autopilot anyway. And he trained on a 737 simulator at Pan Am International Academy in Mesa, Arizona. But he found that the instructor there found that he was well below standard, and he spoke no English, so he really couldn't continue at this school. So he went to many schools actually in Arizona and in Saudi Arabia over the years. In 1997, he obtained his private pilot's license, and he got his commercial pilot certificate issued by the Federal Aviation Administration in April of 1999. So obviously, if you want to say he's a poor pilot, that's debatable. There are people, people who have trained Hani Anjur, who have found his work satisfactory regarding his experience as a pilot, in which there is one video of a pilot trainer who basically said that he was a decent pilot. I'll link it to the description box so you can read it. Also, you raised another point in the video regarding the woman in the Pentagon who crawled out the hole and said there were no plane parts. That's April Gallup. Again, this is another point raised by no planers, people who don't believe planes crash in the Pentagon. Love to bring this woman up. By the way, she was in the building. And I also noticed, too, everybody tends to dismiss the over 100 people who saw the plane and who were outside the building, who saw the plane. April Gallup was inside the building, and she crawled out and basically said, I didn't see any plane. I didn't see any plane parts. Meanwhile, you have people like Lieutenant Colonel Brian Burwell, who's an employee at the Pentagon, who actually was in the wreck area before the plane hit and watching the day's events on a TV screen of the South and North Towers burning, and he goes to the bathroom. As soon as he gets out, the plane crashes right where he's standing. In fact, he's about approximately 50 to 75 feet away from the impact, but he was close enough to where he was burned by jet fuel, 60% of his body. A missile can't do that, and no plane can't do that. No bomb can do that either. It was the plane. Plane crashed into the building. Lack of noticeable debris. Well, planes going at 500 miles an hour, fully loaded, 15,000 approximately pounds of kerosene, hitting a solid structure. Like I said in one video, where this is the wall, here's the plane. The force, the whole momentum. Here's the front. Here's the tail, all crushing into the structure, all at once. Explosion, debris scattered everywhere in tiny bits. There's not going to be large pieces of plane debris that you usually see in common general plane crashes. Why? Because with common general plane crashes, you have these planes who are trying not to crash the plane. Obviously, that wasn't the case on 9/11, where the pilots wanted to crash the plane at the highest speeds possible into solid structures. Usually, you'll get planes that land on their belly. They'll break apart. You'll see large pieces, planes' wings and all that. The pilots dumping their fuel so the plane won't become like a bomb. That wasn't the case on 9/11. The hijackers who hijacked these planes wanted to cause the maximum amount of damage. And so with the plane crashing into the Pentagon, you didn't have entire engines surviving or entire wings, an entire tail. I'm sorry, that didn't happen there. At no site, none of this was possible. They did manage to find pieces of the engines in between A and C Drive, which is the driveway in the middle of the Pentagon rings, in which they found the fuselage, landing gear, and parts of the engine, which was the turbofan. And there are photographs of debris in small pieces. They managed to find the flight data recorder, which survived, but the cockpit voice recorder was damaged beyond repair. Couldn't get anything from it. Why would they announce they have a flight data recorder? Why would they announce it at all? If there was such a cover-up of sorts. And as for these 80 cameras that you bring up, there's another misconception. The cameras at the western facade of the Pentagon weren't working because that was where the area of the Pentagon which was under renovation. And those cameras weren't working. The claim that these 85 cameras were collected by the FBI, that was for the surrounding area of Virginia, of Arlington. Stores, hotels. In fact, 2 videos are released, and one of them is the Doubletree Hotel. The other one's Sitco's gas station. They're available through the Jacqueline McGuire Declaration. Jacqueline McGuire is an FBI agent, is part of the Pentagon investigation, which was an answer to a Freedom of Information request by Scott Bingham, one of the family members of the attacks. And the FBI released the 85 video list, which you can Google online. So basically, I like to end it there because I think I covered most of the areas in which I found that you were wrong on. I don't know whether you're going to make a rebuttal video, but I just want to clear things up with you, John. This is not an indictment against you personally. This is not a challenge either. I'm trying to help you. That's the basis of my channel. And the basis of why I got into 9/11 was I wanted to learn more of it and help people along the way. And when it comes to research, John, I fell into that trap too, and I started in 2006. And the first film I saw was In Plain Sight. It was produced by David Von Kleist. And In Plain Sight basically said that no planes crashed anywhere. And that the plane in New York had a pod underneath that was a missile. It's ridiculous. And a lot of the stuff that he says is wrong. I mean, a 16-foot hole at the Pentagon, there is no 16-foot hole. It's basically the hole of the second floor that's cut, and the first floor is covered by the fire foam of the fire department that came on site to put out the fire. And that was purported by Thierry Mason, who basically straight up lied about what happened at the Pentagon, wrote a book about it. People believed it, took off, thanks to Loose Change. Thanks to Alex Jones, and Jim Fetzer, and Christopher Bolin, and Rebecca Roth, and Craig McKee, Barbara Honegger. And these people aren't researchers. They're not. They're just not. I blame them. I don't blame you, John. You're a victim. You just came on to the scene 4 years ago. So I just wanted to help you along the way. And, I'll link the information below the screen. And hope you found the video helpful.